There are many things that a university should do for the students who come to it. And one of the most important is certainly assisting students to make good decisions about the way they're going to lead their lives, their callings, their professional choices, how they are going to lead their public and private lives. And I suggest there are three questions that help to make that decision. The first question is this, whatever the role is that you're considering, a source of joy? Secondly, is it something that taps your talents, that really engages all of your abilities and all of your gifts and uses them in the fullest and richest way possible? And thirdly, is this role a genuine service to the people around you, to the society at large? Or, if I can put those three questions in a slightly snappier fashion, do you get a kick out of it? Are you any good at it? And does anybody want you to do it? First of all, the question about joy. Now, I have to make a distinction right at the start. There is a difference between joy and happiness. I'm not asking, does this vocation make you happy? Because happiness is dependent on all sorts of external factors. It's affected by whether I slept well last evening, whether breakfast agrees with me, what the weather is like, whether I'm feeling well on a particular day. All sorts of external factors come into play affecting whether or not I'm feeling happy at any given moment. Joy, however, is something much deeper and much more central. It comes from within. It's a sense of the genuine rightness of the way in which one lives one's life. So happiness can change from day to day, indeed sometimes from moment to moment. If on any particular day you were to ask me, are you happy being a priest? The answer might, on a particular day, be, well, not terribly, because I'm busy and I'm preoccupied and things have gone wrong and the car didn't start this morning and there's too much snow and I skipped lunch. But if you ask me at any time, is being a priest a joyful way to live a life? The answer is certainly yes, it is. That this is a deeply and importantly good way for me to live my life. That's what I mean by joy, the sense of the rightness of the way in which one is living one's life. On the other hand, I'm not talking about satisfaction either. As it happens, I think satisfaction is not only not the same thing as joy, I think in some ways it can detract from joy. Indeed, St. Augustine, in his Confessions, suggests that a human being is one whose heart is restless until it rests in God. Therefore, for Augustine, dissatisfaction, restlessness, is not a bad thing. Indeed, it's the best thing about us. It's what constantly moves us forward, makes us grow, expands our horizons, deepens our perceptions. Dissatisfaction is a very healthy, a very important, and a very valuable thing. The great American 20th century poet, Marianne Moore, ends one of her, I think, finest poems with the line, "Satisfaction is a lowly thing. How pure a thing is joy." a sense of contentment, a sense that, yeah, everything's fine as it is. I don't have to grow, I don't have to change, I don't have to do anything beyond what I am doing. Far from being part of the way one discerns one's vocation, can actually be an obstacle at one's vocation. By contrast, joy always pushes us forward. To be really joyful at one's role in life is to feel a kind of impulsion, a kind of pressure to move forward, to do more, to expend oneself more deeply, more richly, more fully, to open one's talents even more widely than one had before. So the question is, first and foremost, what gives you joy? What is the source of your joy? How do you begin to discover that? Well, the first thing I should point out about discovering it is that you answer this question. You may consult lots of other people, parents and friends, teachers, counselors, spiritual directors. You may invite them to help you discern what is a source of joy for you. But finally, no one but you can say, this is my joy. You have to discover that for yourself. Now, in doing so, one useful approach can be to ask, what have you discovered about yourself to this point? Over the years, I've often said to students that one of the best ways to get inside any creative thinker's mind, a philosopher, a theologian, an artist, a scientist, one of the best ways to get into the way they think is to ask, what are their obsessions? That is to say, what are the things that they can't leave alone? Questions, concerns, issues that they return to over and over and over again. That when they're talking about one issue, lo and behold, they end up making it a question about this other concern. Well, one of the questions that you might consider is, what are your obsessions? What are the concerns, the questions, the issues that you find yourself returning to again and again and again because they fascinate you, they excite you, they really intrigue you, they puzzle you, they lure you on, they get you to ask more and more questions? That's a very good indication that this is a place where your joy lies. And if you are going to spend a life, for heaven's sake, spend it in a way that gives you joy. There would be nothing worse than to come to the end of one's life, certainly one's professional life, look back upon it and say, on the whole, it was dull. The most important thing you can do is come to a point in your life where you can say, this, whatever this is a genuine joy for me. Now, that joy may lead you in many, many directions. It may bring you on to further questions. You see, there's never a point where you can say, the issue of my calling is settled. Vocations lead to vocations. Answering one question may well raise other questions and lead you forward. There's no point in your life where you can say, vocational discernment is settled. I don't need to ask those questions any longer. The only time your vocation is settled is when you're perfectly settled. And that will probably happen about a quarter of an hour after they seal the casket. So I suggest to you that what you need to do is look for the ways joy leads you forward. Look at the ways it moves you on to other questions. Now, some people, close friends, people who have known you a long time, people with whom you've been very honest and whose opinion you genuinely trust, those people may be able to tell you, in my observation, the times when I've seen you most energized, most excited, most alive, have been when you've been engaged in X or Y or Z. That may be a very helpful thing to hear, because although no one else can answer the question for you, they may be able to help you frame the question. And it is in framing the question that one begins the process of answering it. So by all means, consult others, but remember, only you can finally say, this is a genuine source of joy in my life. Happiness is something quite distinct. If you end up happy, I'll be delighted, and I'm sure you will be. But it's not what your life is about. It's not about contentment or satisfaction. Indeed, there are few things that I would wish for people more than that they remain discontented and dissatisfied, always prodded to move on. But joy is the delight one takes in being dissatisfied. It's the deep delight that one feels in being called to something still before you, to a new decision and a new way of living. So the first question in discerning what you do with your life is it a source of joy for you? And now the second question. Is this vocation, this role, this profession, this way of living a life that you're considering, is it something that you're good at, that's going to tap your talents, that's going to lead you to expand your abilities, that's going to lead you to be ever more creative in the course of your life? And that can really only be distinguished by other people. For example, I may get great delight in being a brain surgeon. There's absolutely nothing I enjoy more than chopping off the top of the skull and getting my fingers into the old gray stuff inside the cranium. But if all of my patients end up vegetables, that's a very good indication that I am not a brain surgeon by vocation. Are you successful at what you're doing? Are you good at it? Other people have to tell us that. For 10 years in my own life, I was dean of a seminary. And one of the things I noticed that happened very frequently was that students who came to the seminary were very open to its direction during the first year or 2 years that they were there. Because during that time, the students were making decisions about what they wanted to do, about whether or not they decided that priesthood was their vocation. They were asking that first question, was it their joy? But at a certain point, usually about 2 years in, the students would come to a conclusion, yes or no. Yes, they wanted to be ordained. No, they didn't. And once they decided that the answer was yes, they became increasingly impatient with the seminary. You were here to help me decide whether or not I want to be a priest. Well, thank you very much. You've done your job. I made my decision. The answer is yes. So ordain me and let me get on with my life. And it always came as something of a shock to the students when, as dean, I had to suggest to them that there was another question that had to be answered. And the other question was, did the church want them to be priests? Other people help us to discern whether or not we are genuinely good at what we do. That's enormously important because often we ourselves are not the best judges of what our talent and abilities are. Years ago, I was giving a lecture, and someone in the audience, who it turned out was a quite prominent psychologist, came up to tell me how much he had enjoyed the lecture. And I went through my usual, "Oh, thank you very much, that's so gracious of you, yes, 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 you're very kind." And he said to me, "Don't brush it aside that way. You think it's no great deal to give the lecture you just gave, because you do that kind of thing regularly. You don't realize that it's really a service to others and that you're good at it." And it struck me, that's often true. The things that we're best at are the things that in many ways come easiest to us, the things we feel most comfortable and most natural doing. And therefore, we don't realize that they're really quite remarkable. I suspect that a really great pianist doesn't think giving a superb performance of a piece of music is anything all that remarkable. They're used to it. They do it all the time. They've been doing it for years. It's only the rest of us, the hearers of the music, the audience, who can say, "That was really extraordinary." Only others can reflect back to us what we do and how well we do it. And that's why it's so important to allow other people to review our talents with us. Of course, we also have to be open to the fact that there are things that we think we do superbly well, and someone else has to say to us, "You know, you're really not all that good at it. You know, that's really not your strength." The humility to hear what we're good at and the humility to hear what we're not good at is an enormously important virtue in discerning this vocational question. So if joy is the quality to look for in answering the first question, the need for a genuinely humble openness to other people's directions and suggestions is central to answering this question. There would be nothing worse, I think, than arriving at such a pitch of expertise in whatever we do that we come to the point of being able to say, "I can do that rolling off a log. I can do that in my sleep. It no longer excites me. It no longer challenges me. It no longer makes me grow." Look for the task that will continue to stretch you. That's all important in discerning the really vital vocation in one's life. To help us discern what our talents and gifts are, we need a circle of friends. And those friends may be people who are close to us the way our best friends are, but they may also be parents and teachers and coaches and mentors in all sorts of ways. The fostering of a community of friends who can be honest with us and whom we can genuinely hear, before whom and with whom we can be open and humble. That circle of friends is crucial to vocational discernment. So what are you good at? Where are your talents? How might you still grow? Those are the questions that now have to be answered. The third question to consider in discerning vocation is, does anybody need you to do it? What does the community of people in which you live really need from your talents? That is to say, is the role you're considering a way of self-gift, a way of serving others? It may very well be that I am an extraordinarily accomplished and successful shepherd. Sheep simply go mad for me. I walk into a room and sheep curl up and purr. But the fact is that the community in which I live, in New York, doesn't really have much need for a shepherd. If that's so, even though it may be a source of happiness and joy to me, even though it may be something I'm good at, it's not my vocation. One needs to respond to the needs of the community in which one finds oneself. I am absolutely convinced, indeed, there are a few things about which I am more convinced, than that the central issue in being a human being, and therefore in being a Christian, is what the New Testament calls agape, a very particular form of love, a love which is self-gift, a way of giving oneself away to the other. That is the center of the Christian life, and I am convinced the center of being a human being. And therefore, it's crucial as we make decisions about what we're going to do with our lives, that we ask, how can I best give myself to the people around me? But, just as in the case of my second question, the people who answer this are not the ones making the decision, it's the people whom we are serving. That we need to hear from the people around us what they really need. What is it that they want us to do? Once we know that this is a source of joy, once we know this is something I've got talents and abilities to perform, and I think that those talents and abilities will be stretched and expanded for the rest of my life in doing this work, is it something that people around us really need us to do? Does the community call us to this work? That's absolutely central in our consideration. All too often, we raise questions about vocational discernment as if everything depends on what I want and what I love, when in fact, at least as important, perhaps more important in making a good vocational decision, is what do the people around me need? What is it that the community requires that I am able to supply? We need to be able to listen to others about their needs. St. Thomas Aquinas says that the crown and summit of the whole of the ethical life is what he calls caritas, charity, what the New Testament describes as agape, what I've just called self-gift. And when Thomas says that it's the crown and summit of the whole of the ethical life, he means that all the other virtues play into caritas, play into self-gift. I want to suggest two qualities that are absolutely necessary, two virtues that are crucial to being able to give oneself away in a meaningful and important way to others. And those two virtues are wisdom and courage. Wisdom is much more than simply knowledge. It's not only having information or knowing certain techniques. It is, I suggest to you, preeminently knowing that the other is other. What I mean is this. I sometimes suspect, and I say this as I look at myself and not just look at the people around me, that many of us live our lives as if we were the stars of a motion picture in which we have the lead role. Himes, the movie. Indeed, it often strikes me as I see students on campuses walking about with Walkmen that now many of us even have our own private soundtracks for our movies. So that whenever I walk into a room, somewhere at the back, the Star Wars theme is playing. The hero has arrived. Everyone else may have a role in my film. Some of them have even fairly large supporting parts, but they're clearly supporting parts. The film is about me, and everyone else plays a role in my life. One of the most difficult things to do is to arrive at the wisdom which perceives other people as other people, not simply as role players in my world. I'm sure you've heard people say things like, I can read her like a book. I know exactly what he thinks. I know just how she feels. And I am always tempted to say, if you know her or him like a book, then you don't know them at all. Because you see, they're not a book. They're a human being. The fact is that we need to perceive others as others, not to project on them what we would like if we were in their shoes, because we're not in their shoes. The second virtue, which is crucial to agape, is courage. Courage enables us to risk giving ourselves to people who may not always appreciate the gift. I don't think there is anything more devastating in human experience than being an unrequited lover, than being someone who genuinely extends himself or herself for others and is not appreciated. We have to be willing to hear what others need and to give ourselves a response even when our attempt to respond may not be appreciated. Wisdom and courage, absolutely necessary for leading a genuinely agapic life. So, when I ask the question, do people need your gift? What I'm really asking is, have you discerned what the people around you really most deeply require? And have you got the courage to respond to that need? It may very well be that you have discovered your joy. It may very well be that you know what your abilities are. Now you need to discover what the people around you really most desire, hope for, and require. One last point which concerns all three questions. What is our deepest and most fundamental vocation? Because you see, we all have multiple vocations. For example, I'm a priest and an academic. I'm a teacher and a writer. I'm also a friend and a son and a brother and an uncle. I'm a citizen. I fill many roles in the course of my life, private and public, professional and personal. But there is one vocation which embraces all our other vocations, to be a human being, by which I mean that we are called to be as intelligent, as responsible, as free, as courageous, as imaginative, as loving as we can possibly be. All of my other vocations, all of the many ways in which I live my life, must contribute to that one all-embracing demand, that one constant vocation, to be fully, totally, absolutely as human as I can possibly be. And one way into that is to ask the questions, what gives you joy? What are you really good at? And what do the people around you really need?